Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. For less than $10 per person, per meal, Blue Apron delivers seasonal recipes along with pre-portioned ingredients to make delicious home-cooked meals. You can choose from a variety of new recipes each week, or you can let the Blue Apron culinary team surprise you. They don't repeat recipes within a year. You won't get bored. Right now, they've got summer vegetable and egg paninis. They've got the soy-glazed pork and rice cakes with bok choy and marinated green beans. Customize your recipes each week based on your preferences. Blue Apron has several delivery options, so you can choose what fits your needs. No weekly commitment, so you only get deliveries when you want them. Each meal comes with a step-by-step, easy-to-follow recipe card and pre-portioned ingredients and can be prepared in 40 minutes or less. Guaranteed. Blue Apron's freshness guarantee promises every ingredient in your delivery arrives ready to cook, or they'll make it right. So check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/Bomani. You'll love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so don't wait. That's blueapron.com/Bomani. Blue Apron, a better way to cook.
The City Double Cash Card presents tips for watching sports with your friends. Number 5, be passionate.
Oh, shouting what I would have done on that last play.
I am way too invested in this.
Check it out. I'm completely overreacting, so you know I care.
Wouldn't it be great if everyone said what they meant? The City Double Cash Card does. It lets you earn double cash back with 1% when you buy and 1% as you pay. The City Double Cash Card. Double means double.
Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Right Time with Bomani Jones. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. Hanging out in for Bomani. 1-888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. And Mike Golic Jr., I'm going to make a definitive statement here. The world and you, I get to call you wrong at the very beginning of the show. This doesn't happen very often.
It's a good place to start.
The world was wrong if you stood up and said that we were going to get a trash fight that wasn't going to be entertaining and it wasn't worth buying. Today, you have to stand up, eat a little crow, and admit to the world, guess what? What we actually got was entertainment. We got a fight that was entertainment, and that in and of itself was a victory for many people, myself included.
I mean, you can take it as a victory. I'll be glad to let you have that because I know you need that in your life at this point. But I think it's all about what you came into the fight expecting this weekend. And I think for the crowd, like myself, because you can twist my words if you want and say I was wrong, all I said going into this weekend was that turning on this fight, it ends whenever Floyd Mayweather wants it to end. And looking at the way the fight played out, you can make a very strong argument that that's still exactly what happened. We just got it out over a long enough timeline to feel like we got our money's worth out of a fight that you shelled out probably $100 for.
Can we not agree, though, in the process of looking at it? We're going to start with Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. The Straight Talk is many people expected that this fight wasn't even going to be worth watching, that it would be over in 3 or 4 rounds, that McGregor would be outmatched from the get-go, and above and beyond your concept of, hey, Mayweather can end it when he wants to end it. Most people talking about the fight, especially over the last 10 days, 2 weeks, weren't anticipating an entertaining product. And I don't think you can deny the fact that when you were watching the fight, you were watching something that at its very core, at the very least, it was entertaining.
It was entertaining, but I think you're talking about one camp that doesn't think what you are projecting on them. What I mean by that is the people that said this is going to be a terrible fight were our boxing analysts, were Stephen A. Smith, were Max Kellerman, were Teddy Atlas, and our boxing purists who said that from a pure boxing standpoint, you're putting a guy who's essentially an amateur in there with one of the best fighters of our generation. So, of course, it's not going to be a good fight, but everyone else who was part of the spectacle camp and said, well, I'm going to watch this because it's an oddity and because I can get together with my friends and bookend it with a fantasy draft and have some beers leading up to it and do all these different things. That group got exactly what they wanted. For me, it's like this season of Game of Thrones. If you came into this season wanting all of the same nuance and all of the same character development and depth, yeah, you might be a little disappointed. But that's a different crowd from people like me who said, you know what? I'm finally getting White Walkers and Dragons like I got teased all along. I knew this coming into it. I knew this is what it was about. And I'm satisfied because I got that.
You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz, ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance. Okay, we'll show our differences in personality because, of course, you bring it back to a Game of Thrones reference. I I will bring it back like the man I am to a Britney Spears reference. Because, see, I was in Vegas over the weekend and took my wife. We went to see a Britney Spears concert, and it actually made me think of this fight before the fight had happened. We see Britney, and I'm watching, and I'm thinking, you know what? She's lip-syncing the whole show, and not even trying to hide the fact that she's lip-syncing the whole show. She's sort of dancing, but not really dancing. But there were so many lasers and so much video, and the dancers around her were so good that it was a spectacle. And I was looking at it thinking, this is exactly what I expected. It might stink, but it's so entertaining to watch that I can't take my eyes off of it. I think in some ways the fight actually managed to accomplish that. The fact that early on McGregor had personality, early on he was sort of, not only was he able to move, he was moving behind Mayweather so much. We didn't know what to expect. People hadn't seen that before. Watching it, it felt like he was on the verge of maybe losing control a little bit. It was interesting to watch because above and beyond everything else, you just didn't know what to expect, and you were sort of visually mesmerized by it. I think that's exactly what everybody needed in this fight. I got my money's worth out of the process of watching the fight, no matter how technically sound it was, because fact is, I was smiling the whole time I was watching it. Oh, you know what? We should just play that throughout the rest of the show. That
give you a nice flashback right there. You say you could just put that bed underneath the rest of the segment. I wouldn't hate it. I've been down a Britney Spears rabbit hole once or twice, but listen, I understand that point. I just think you're talking about grading on a different scale than some people were willing to going into the fight, because you're right. What we got created was doubt, right? In those first 3 rounds, when Mayweather was McGregor was winning those rounds, you got enough doubt. I heard Stu Gatz on the Dan Le Batard show earlier today said he actually looked over at his wife and thought, I actually am doubting Mayweather might win this. It may have been only for a split second, but it was enough doubt that even though may have been artificially created, like you had a guy go out there and actively try and bet on himself for the 9.5 round over and then knock him out, TKO him in 10 all along, who we knew could probably put him down whenever he wanted, but we still got what we were desiring. They gave us enough, especially in comparison to what was the constant talk. Just don't be as boring and uninspiring as Mayweather-Pacquiao.
Can part of this be to our expectations were so low, and I think that's something Conor McGregor actually talked about, the media not trusting his skill. This is what McGregor had to say.
But I tell you what, I enjoyed it very, very much. It was an honor for me to come over here in the boxing side and showcase my skills. I know there was a lot of disrespect and disregard for my skill. You know what I mean? I'm a multiple weight free fighting world champion. I was a little bit taken back by the disrespect and the disregard that I was shown. In fairness, Floyd and his team never actually showed that disrespect. It was just the overall, everyone else, and it was almost like a little bit of a jealousy thing, so I kind of just got over it. But the disrespect for my skill set was a little bit, it took me back a little bit. But I always knew that when the fight comes around, August 26th, I'm going to show up and I'm going to give a good account of myself.
It's the right time. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. And maybe some of it was that we didn't trust the skill. I don't necessarily want to say it that way, but I think that most people thought he was just going to be bad. And at the very least, in the beginning, he wasn't bad.
I don't think this is about Conor McGregor being bad, though. When he plays the disrespect card there, it's sort of hilarious, because if the shoe was on the other foot and we were talking about Floyd going over and trying to perform in mixed martial arts in that octagon with Conor McGregor, we'd be making all these same points, and McGregor would be the first one lining up to say, you can't do what I do. This was about respecting Floyd Mayweather's skill set in a craft that he's actually been doing, this specific one, for his whole career.
I have a hard time, and that's Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks. Man, I got a hard time coming in this process and anybody trying to excuse where the fight took place, because at some point, I'm a little guy, right? And you're bigger than I am. The world knows that. And
understatement, sure.
If I decide that I'm going to run my mouth and we're going to have it out, and then I get my butt kicked, I don't get to turn around and say, yeah, but look at how much bigger he is than I am. I started that. I allowed that to happen. I didn't walk away from that. So I have a little bit of a hard time anytime that we try and qualify where the fight took place, how the fight took place, the rules of the fight, because McGregor put himself in that situation, right? I mean, he put himself in this situation to take home a huge payday and in the process get this huge platform, and in the process lose a boxing match. I think what's all surprising to so many of us is that he went as far as he went, that he looked as good as he did, and until he was completely out of gas, there were people, it's not just Stugatz, there were people watching it, looking at it and saying, holy cow, I put my $50 down. I looked at it early on and I thought maybe I'll get lucky. Just didn't happen.
We put Floy Mayweather up against a guy who had never boxed in this setting before, and then commented and said, wow, this looks amazing because it doesn't look the way Floyd's traditionally looked in the boxing ring, and acted surprised by that. Why would we expect it to look when all the talk was, well, how is he going to respond to Conor and what Conor might try and what things are different? No, when you're going up against a guy that you don't have to worry about in traditional boxing senses, I think it's going to look differently than it normally would, and yet we somehow acted surprised because that's what we wanted. A lot of this is going into it. You can confirm exactly what you wanted because this fight had all of it. If you want to believe that Floyd carried him to 10 rounds, you can believe that pretty easily. If you want to believe that Conor McGregor was better than we expected, sure, but we're all just kind of filling it in the Mad Lib slot that we already had opened up before with this weekend even got here.
Oh, such a conspiracy theorist. I mean, it can just be a great fight, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be one guy was toying with the other. I mean, it could just be a fun fight. We want to make it so much more difficult than that. You can get in touch with us, by the way. 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed is out there. He's at M. Golic Jr. 57. Yeah, that's right, at M. Golic Jr. 57. I'm at Jason Fitz. You can get to us there. I want to continue the conversation because I have to ask you, Golic Jr., you and I both, I think, hate participation trophies. And the question is, are we suddenly cool with one here? Does McGregor get some credit for lasting 10 rounds? Are we cool with moral victory? We want to look at that next. Plus, we'll take your calls. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. It's the right time with Bomani Jones. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz.
The right time with Bomani Jones.
Time with Bomani Jones. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. All our guests are going to appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You can call, you can chime in. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 1-888-729-3776. Now, Golic, you obviously grew up in a very competitive environment. And I don't believe most people that come up in hardcore competitive environments that are successful in very competitive industry necessarily grow up in a performance trophy atmosphere. So without having spent a lot of time, you and I, communicating about this, I'm going to believe that you didn't really grow up in a huge performance trophy environment.
I'm going to see participation trophies?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes, participation.
Well, only in swimming. I was at one point a swimmer when I was very young, and I led that league in the pink and purple last place participation ribbons. And I understood their value, which was there was no value in them, and I haphazardly threw them into my closet and never saw them again.
Well, for me, growing up a musician in a very competitive classical world, there were trophies given all the time, and participation trophies were not acceptable. Like that just wasn't something I grew up around. And so I've always sort of had a hard time with that mentality. So I understand why some people are coming in and saying, hey, how can you credit what is essentially a moral victory for Conor McGregor? And so I have to come in and ask you, do you feel, because for me, it doesn't necessarily feel like a moral victory. I'm not coming in and saying there's a victory here. I am coming in and saying somebody performed better than many people thought he would. Now, that doesn't mean it's victory. That just means the fight was better than I expected it to be.
Kind of sounds like you're giving him a moral victory. If I'm calling it what it sounds like you're giving him he didn't fall flat on his face or get knocked out, and so you should all give him a little more respect than you were going into this.
No,
because there's no moral victories. This is just a payday. Like, he walked up and he can be all smiles and buddy-buddy with Floyd after in the ring because they both just got paid. Neither one of them really got hurt. Like, that's all this is. This was a business transaction that we all just tried to turn into a coherent sporting event.
Yeah, but at the same time, you can come in and say, hey, that was better than I thought, without saying that there's a victory here. I mean, he got that butt whooped. Like, there's no two ways about it. He lost the fight, and at the end, I'm not one that thinks that they ended it too soon either. I mean, at the end, it just felt like Mayweather was going to do whatever he wanted, however he wanted. So I was glad they stopped it when they stopped it. But at some point, I look at it and say, hey, that doesn't mean that I can't turn around and give credit to a performance that I thought was going to be better. It's not a victory. It's just saying, hey, man, like, if you come up to me and say, you know what, today, you were not as terrible on the radio show as I thought you were going to be. That's not a moral victory. That's just saying I'm not totally awful.
backhanded compliments a little bit of a different realm, but that's sort of splitting hairs of me. I guess I don't know either.
Splitting hairs. That's funny from you.
Okay, ball jokes are where you got to fall back on once you realize you've caught yourself in the middle of a bit of hypocrisy here, because you can't. I don't know if you can come on and say that, yes, to Conor McGregor's credit, this thing went 10 because of his skill set, and not say that you're giving him somewhat of a moral victory in all this just for not hitting the mat before 10.
Oh, man, think about it. Like when you were out playing and you're playing in a football game, let's say that there's a period in your life where you're not particularly on a great team, and that team goes out and everyone thinks that they're going to get crushed, and instead they lose at the end of the game. You can admit that, hey, that game was better than I thought it would be, without suddenly saying that the loser gets some sort of a trophy for it. I mean, he obviously gets a bank account the rest of us would be enviable of. That's a trophy in and of itself, but I'm not trying to give him some sort of victory for it.
I could see that, and this ends up kind of being not really a circular argument, but an argument about nothing, because I understand what you're trying to say. Like the prime example is that Alabama game where we got our butts kicked in the national title. I'll always go back and point to the fact that when I had to cut that tape up to try and send out to NFL teams later on, it was actually one of my better games. But no one wants to hear that. Like, no one is trying to hear that when I bring that up, just like no one is trying to hear any of this nonsense about Conor right now having a better day than expected. Like, I understand that. That's why I don't bring it up that often. That's why I know I'm going to even live to regret saying it now in front of you guys.
Oh, that is the highlight of my time working with Mike Golic Jr. right there. Kyle in Pennsylvania chiming in. Kyle, thanks for calling, man. What do you got?
Hey, man, I got 2 points for you real quick. All right, for one, Conor McGregor ain't between the age of 6 to 10 playing low Pee Wee youth football, so he shouldn't get a participation trophy. So that right there should be out the door. Yeah, you put up a good fight. You should have beat him in the first 3 rounds when he was walking him down like he was. He put up a good fight, but why a participation trophy? Don't get it. No, negative. Put that out the door. It's just like if Floyd came over to UFC and got his butt kicked, are you going to give him a participation trophy for that? No.
I'm not giving anybody a trophy. I'm just saying we can acknowledge he did better than we expected.
Yeah, he did, but did you pay for the fight?
Yeah.
I
was in Vegas.
Yep,
so.
You already said yes. So basically, you donated. This is my second point. You donated to their cause. Like, this was a big payday for them. It's like we basically seen a celebrity boxing match, and it was like we donated to them. I mean, like, the boxing match was good, but I mean, it was BS at my point, man. It was we just gave them the biggest payday, basically. It ain't like Floyd's gonna come over to UFC and give them and try to fight him. So hey, I mean, but thanks for my call, guys. I appreciate it.
Kyle, thanks for the call, man. We appreciate it.
He's right? Like, I don't know how we could deny that. We were searching for a reason. We searched for it in the press conferences leading up. We were looking for any reason we could across the board to justify the money we knew we were going to all spend on this, because we don't want to be left out. Like, at the very core, the reason things are popular a lot of times now is because you don't want to be the one not having the conversation Monday when it all hits.
But it's not like it wasn't a good value. Again, I'll remind you, 1 ticket to Britney Spears was more than this fight. So why am I going to suddenly apologize for a fight that lasted hours that gave tons of entertainment? It was less than 1 ticket to Britney Spears lip syncing in Vegas.
But see, the difference is you were comfortable with Britney Spears lip syncing because you don't care, because there's not that competitive aspect. But all of a sudden, I hint at the fact that Floy Mayweather went and bet on the exact time where he was actually going to put Conor McGregor down, which is also insane in the world of sports. The guy in the game went and bet on it, and yet we get mad at Pete Rose in baseball for betting on his team to win all the time, but it's suddenly cool here, and when it ends exactly then, and we hint at the idea that maybe he planned for that, all of a sudden we're not cool with that because it's sports, and we want to believe that this is a beautiful competition, and everyone out there and gave it their all, and it was totally fair. It's totally different than Britney, where you concede walking in the door that what you're seeing is smoke and mirrors.
Zach in Portland chiming in. Zach, what do you got?
Hey, I was just going to comment on the notion of this participation trophy. We've seen in sports a lot of examples of, teams or players or whatever overcoming losses. I think of the 2007 Giants. After they lost to Patriots in the last game, they kind of knew that measuring stick. I don't know if we can compare Conor McGregor to kind of seeing that same measuring stick to what is like known as maybe the greatest boxer of all time, and he comes out of it looking like he understood and what he saw was actually a good fight. So I don't know if he can build off that, because he's not going to get a rematch like the Giants did with the Patriots, but I don't know. I just kind of see it as something to build on.
Zach, thanks for the call, man. Appreciate it.
I don't know what you're building on because, again, you're probably not going to take another boxing fight. None of them are going to have the draw of this one. And you go back to UFC, and you're still a guy that's been a championship-caliber fighter over there. So, to me, I don't know, unless you were building off the idea of a rematch in this, that really goes out the door.
I don't know, though, but if you look at participation trophies and you look at giving credit to hard-fought or to unexpected challenges in football, doesn't that happen all the time in the Super Bowl? If you have a Super Bowl that's closer than you thought, and somebody goes home with without the Super Bowl trophy, and we credit them.
But see, all this just comes back to the fact that you want to slander participation trophies that are like not a thing that happens or has any merit. Notice at the beginning, I never come out and said that I was against participation trophies. You just got to understand where they factor in with everything else. And if you don't treat it the same as you treat the rest of it, then you don't let it hurt you. You want to treat it the same as the rest of it and make it a bad thing if it's around. And so you can't win this argument now.
But I don't want to make it a bad thing. I just don't like the very concept of it. But I think we can credit somebody in a loss without necessarily calling it a participation trophy. I don't think that I don't think they have to be one and the same.
Hey man, you can give something a different name. It's still going to be what it is. Like the great Stephen A. Smith said, if you order a steak and get a cheeseburger, ain't it still a cheeseburger? Oh, by the way, we still haven't gotten to the best sound coming off this fight. We're gonna get to that a little bit later because nothing that we've said will ever come up with what Stephen A. and Teddy Atlas said after this.
Brian Custer going to join us next from Showtime. Does Conor deserve credit for lasting as long as he did? We'll talk to one of our favorites and get his thoughts on it. We'll do that next in the right time with Bomani Jones. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. Don't forget, guys, handcrafted, it's all the rage. From flour-pressed soap to homemade hot sauce to artisanal pickles. I don't even know what that is, but artisanal pickles, yeah. Well, Firestone Complete Auto Care is glad it's catching on because they've been handcrafting repairs since 1926, and their 4,000 ASC certified technicians work hard every day to keep cars running like new. Before people were making organic greeting cards and rock jewelry in their basements, Firestone Complete Auto Care has been hard at work in the garage, tightening, torquing, wrenching, and they're back at that work with their fixed right promise, guaranteeing your car is fixed right, your repair is priced right, and the work is completed right on time. Keep your car running newer, longer. When the road gets rough, you need a set of tires that can get tough. Right now at Firestone Complete Auto Care, get $70 by mail on a Bridgestone Visa prepaid card when you buy a set of 4 eligible Bridgestone tires. Whatever you drive a Firestone. Offer valid August 10th through October 8th. In stores only. Claim form required. Excludes Blizzak. Restrictions apply. See claim form for eligible tires and details. Prepaid card issued by the Bank Corp Bank, member FDIC.
The right time with Bomani Jones.
It's the right time with Bomani Jones. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. You can get instant gold status at Shell. Just join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. All our guests join us via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. This guy, one of our favorites, always gold status for him. Brian Custer from Showtime Boxing. Brian, first and foremost, you looked fantastic on TV. Thanks for taking the time to join us. I didn't sneak in, man. I tried, but I couldn't find a viable way to sneak in. So, but you looked good. And when you look at the fight, did the fight look good to you? When you look at it, was it a good match in your mind?
I think it was entertaining. And, listen, I love the sport. I think for the people who paid $100, they wanted entertainment. And I think Conor McGregor gave them that. I think Floyd Mayweather, to the surprise of many, is the one who gave them entertainment because he was the one who continued to just come forward and throw punches. So I would say, when you talk about a classic fighting boxing match, no. But was it entertaining? Absolutely.
Brian, looking at this from the boxing side of things, was there anything that Conor McGregor did from a pure boxing standpoint, maybe technique-wise or other, that impressed you coming off of this night?
You know what? He handled himself well. And I think I loved how he popped the jab, especially early, and he connected often with his jab. And, listen, he used it sometimes to set up big power punches, like if I'm not mistaken, the second round when he hit Mayweather with that uppercut, and Floyd came off his feet with that uppercut. So that was good. But you saw why he's a novice when it comes to actually boxing, because when he got hurt, and especially when he really got tired, he should have really held Floyd and clenched. And he didn't really know how to do it. He was grabbing him around his waist, things of that nature. That's what comes from experience with boxing, knowing how to clinch when you're tired, knowing how to clinch when you're hurt. So he didn't do that. That cost him. Other than that, listen, I think he did himself well. And I think we had talked about this in the past, Fitzy. When you asked me about this fight, now remember I told you it can't go past 25 minutes because when you look at it, his record in the UFC, he had only gone 5. They go 5-minute rounds, but he's only done it once in his career. And when he did it that one time, he gassed out against Nate Diaz. So that's why I said it couldn't go past 25 minutes. It did, and that's what cost him.
And you mentioned that. We're talking to Brian Custer from Showtime Boxing. You mentioned that he looked gassed. Is there anything he could have done differently in your mind to prep for that, or is this just one of those things that you have to have the experience?
Experience, training. The one thing that Conor did that surprised some of us was, he kept all of his UFC guys. You would think he would hire, let's say, a boxing trainer, a boxing coach, but he didn't do that. He said, I have gotten to where I am with my team of guys, and I'm keeping them with me, even though they're mostly all UFC guys. And, he kept all of those guys for this fight. You got to train different. And, you remember during the show we had Pat Miletich on there, and he and Paulie Malignaggi did a great demonstration on things that MMA fighter has to do to convert himself to a boxer in the ring. But when we came out of that piece, one of the things I told him was, shouldn't his training been different? And Pat said, absolutely. It should have been more of an aerobic workout. And that's why you saw him tire after that 4th round. You could really see his legs got heavy. By the 7th and 8th, he was done.
Brian, talking about Floyd and his approach to this fight, is it not giving Conor McGregor enough credit to say that Floyd, the guy who went and bet on himself in that tried to bet on himself in that 9.5 round over, supposedly, had this in the cards all along, that he was going to drag this out, give people what they wanted, ultimately knowing that after a certain sticking point, he was going to be able to take Conor down?
Yeah, the thing about Floyd, he said that he could only bet, I think, $400,000 because one casino wouldn't take his money because he's actually a promoter as well now. And they said, no, you can't bet on yourself because it would give the appearance that you are fixing the fight. And so he had one of his other guys, lay down, and as much as this casino would take was $400,000 in cash. So that's why he bet the over on $400,000 on himself. But, he knew that if you look at the history of Conor, especially in the UFC, he comes out hard. He throws nothing but power punches. That's going to cost you in boxing. That's why they call it the sweet science for a reason. You can't just come out slugging. You're going to tire yourself out. And I think Floyd knew that this guy's history is, okay, he's probably going to give me all that he has for it, probably about 4 rounds. And right in that middle part is where he's going to really start to tire, and I'm going to turn up the pressure. And then that's when I'm going to try to take him out, 7th, 8th round. Give Conor some credit with his chin because I thought the first 3 rounds were definitely all Conor McGregor. He threw a lot of power shots. But then in that 4th round, you saw how Floyd started to turn it up. Conor kept using movement to try to move around. I think that cost him as well. But I think Floyd knew he was going to be mine. He wouldn't last the entire 12 rounds, but he knew he would get him in the late, maybe 8, maybe 9. But he said, as he said after the fight, hey, it took me to 10. I thought it would probably be a little bit earlier, but credit to Conor McGregor for having a stiff beard.
You can follow him on Twitter at BCusterTV. Man, Brian, great job by you. We appreciate you taking the time, and fantastic job on the broadcast, my friend.
Hey, Fitzy, listen, I appreciate it. And next time, man, call me. Just call me. I will come out and bring you into the fight next time.
Oh, you just made a personal assistant, buddy. You never thought you could. No, thanks, man. Great stuff. Thanks, Brian.
You're with you.
Hey, I'll absolutely take you up on that. Appreciate it, Brian.
All right, be good, guys.
Thanks, man. And Golic, we can't. We're gonna switch gears in a second, but before we get there, this is the greatest audio that was captured on all of this, and Golic Jr. has had the joy down in his heart for this. So you have to hear Stephen A. and Teddy Atlas talking about this. Golic Jr., go for it.
No, well, you know what? Hold on. We gotta give this its just due, Fitzy. I want to hold off on this. This is the crown jewel of the fight. You don't back end this one. We're gonna give this one front and center stage. I want to dig into this with you. You need this.
Okay, well, you'll hear the audio then. We'll do that on the other side. It's The Right Time with Bomani Jones. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. You're listening to The Right Time. ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. You can get in touch with us through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed at mgolicjr, mgolicjr57. I'm at Jason Fitz. The excitement, I've had the opportunity. Here's a random fact, by the way. I don't know, Golic Jr. You wouldn't remember these things, but this is almost our anniversary. In fact, it is the anniversary of the first day that I met Mike Golic Jr. today. Our first TV show together was a year ago tomorrow. So
did you put that reminder in your calendar or something?
No,
I'm
no.
a little weirded out by this.
No, my last show as a musician was a year ago yesterday, and it came up on my Facebook and all that stuff, all these pictures of my last show. And you do remember, the Alaska State Fair was my last show, so I remember that era in life, which means I flew directly from there to Charlotte. We met the next day. There you go. So in our year together, I think the most excited I've seen Mike Golic Jr. was, one, when he discovered the candy dish at ESPNU. Two, and a very close second to this, would be over this sound from Stephen A., Teddy Atlas, going back and forth with each other. This is on the Sports Center that was past my bedtime, and I haven't heard this yet. So, Golic, do you have any preparation, any advice for me?
This is the best sound that came out of the event this week, and I would argue it's actually better than the fight itself. It's Teddy Atlas and Stephen A. getting lost in a metaphor that by the end of it, neither of them can even find their way out of. All the while, poor Steve Levy is just on the outside trying to take back control of something that he is clearly in over his head with.
McGregor forced a gourmet chef to be a fast order cook. That's what he did. He forced a gourmet chef to be a guy.
But doesn't that make it fast food? I mean, the usual analogy, doesn't that make it fast food?
That's
Instead
exactly
of a la carte steak? That's what I'm saying.
He made him go in there.
Listen.
And he made him flip cheeseburgers.
Listen.
He made him
there we go.
He made him do something.
Whoa. Hold on, Teddy.
But his character allowed him still to walk the guy down.
Wait a minute, Teddy. What I'm saying to you is this. If you go to a restaurant to get some steak, some filet mignon, and instead you get a burger. Okay, ain't it a burger? I mean, it's just a burger. That's what we saw tonight. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
He made the adjustment to be what he had to be. He had to be that.
That is fantastic.
Oh, just hearing Steve Levy get that stiff arm at the end of that segment from both of them as he's trying to rein it back in, and Teddy Atlas is having none of it right there.
The anger and the yelling and the accent that comes out of that was really, I mean, the word burger was barely understandable at the end of it. That is, they were passionate about the steak and the filet mignon and the burger bowl.
Shannon brought this up, and it's so true. You can actually hear them both progressively trying to one-up each other's New York accent as this goes along.
It's still a burger, right? It's still a burger.
That's amazing. They don't do that in the South. As somebody that lives in Nashville, you don't get more Southern in your drawl when you're yelling at somebody. But the New York accent definitely flipped to another level there. That was fantastic.
No, but my brother's wife's from Boston, and I can always hear when she gets angry, the accent that she normally hides starts to come out. With these two guys, the angrier they got, the less they could conceal their roots in all of this. And the best part is, I think they're arguing about the same thing. They're both essentially arguing for the same side, that whatever was fast food is fast food. It's just that they're so used to having to disagree with someone, especially Stephen A., in the model that he usually operates in, that he couldn't let Teddy be right about the same thing he was trying to be right about.
That accent has tons of upside. Brought to you by Upside. Now save big on travel and get a big gift card every trip you buy. You'll love Upside.com. That's Upside.com. I can't figure out, though, if I go to a steak place and I order filet and I get a burger, Shannon, how was that again? How's that burger thing?
It's still a burger.
Yeah, if I get a burger, I'm not going to be that happy with it, right? I wanted steak and I got a burger instead. I'm not pleased with that.
We were talking about this in another regard earlier today because North Carolina in their football facility put up "the ceiling is the roof," the Michael Jordan quote from last year at their pep rally, because Michael Jordan has enough clout to get something like that where he just blatantly makes a mistake, and it not only becomes a pop culture reference, but it becomes a calling card for your program. I wonder if Stephen A. is on that level, where "Ain't It Still a Burger," though, could become something of a rallying cry somewhere, to where I'm going to be walking around in the hallway here, and that's going to be on a plaque or commemorated somewhere because Stephen A.'s got that kind of clout in the building.
I will give you $1 American cash to walk in someday. I mean, Mike Golic Jr., you are everywhere right now. So someday you are going to you're gonna stand across from Stephen A. on First Take. I just predict this will happen. And if you will wear a T-shirt that says "Ain't It Still a Burger" on your appearance, I will give you $1 American cash.
Listen, I'll pay whatever it needs to be paid to start getting those printed here around the building. Like I'm sure there's enough of a market for it here alone on the campus that we could get those made and sold in a heartbeat.
Oh, that's amazing. Jason in Boston. Jason, what do you got, man?
We're up against the clock, so I'll make it quick. Just think that boxing purists and MMA people don't understand each other. I don't know if you noticed this. I certainly picked up on it. Every single round, McGregor goes back to his corner. He's getting coached up. He's getting iced. He's getting water. Mayweather's going back, smiling like, you know what? It's a good day to work out. Really happy. I'm in Vegas. I'm just chilling. And the thing of it is all the books had later bets that were all value bets. I took the one at plus 210 that was the Mayweather ends between 7 and 12 rounds. You know, it's perfect. I think everybody got what they wanted.
I think everyone absolutely got what they wanted. By the way, very smart radio caller right there, knowing the clock.
Yeah, knowing the clock. Jason, thanks for the call, man. That is fantastic stuff by you and fantastic knowledge by you. We're going to switch gears a little bit. The mega trade we couldn't stop talking about a few days ago may have fallen apart. Should the Celtics offer anything to the Cavs? We'll look at that next.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million. What color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo!
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. For less than $10 per person, per meal, Blue Apron delivers seasonal recipes along with pre-portioned ingredients to make delicious home-cooked meals. You can choose from a variety of new recipes each week, or you can let the Blue Apron culinary team surprise you. They don't repeat recipes within a year. You won't get bored. Right now, they've got summer vegetable and egg paninis. They've got the soy-glazed pork and rice cakes with bok choy and marinated green beans. Customize your recipes each week based on your preferences. Blue Apron has several delivery options, so you can choose what fits your needs. No weekly commitment, so you only get deliveries when you want them. Each meal comes with a step-by-step, easy-to-follow recipe card and pre-portioned ingredients and can be prepared in 40 minutes or less. Guaranteed. Blue Apron's freshness guarantee promises every ingredient in your delivery arrives ready to cook, or they'll make it right. So check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/Bomani. You'll love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so don't wait. That's blueapron.com/Bomani. Blue Apron, a better way to cook.
The City Double Cash Card presents Tips for Working Out. Number 4, don't back down.
I'm going to increase my speed to see if you can keep up.
Running through pain to try to impress you.
Okay.
I'm barely keeping up.
Wouldn't it be great if everyone said what they meant? The City Double Cash Card does. It lets you earn double cash back with 1% when you buy and 1% as you pay. The City Double Cash Card. Double means double.
Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. In for Bomani. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 1-888-729-3776. That's the number to hang out with us. ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance. And, you know, we were sitting here, each of us, last week, talking about the mega trade between the Celtics and the Cavs on different shows, respectively. talking about the huge difference. What does it mean? What are they going to do?
Does
Now
this
the
get
whole-
anyone over the hump and beat Golden State?
Oh, that's the age-old question. You're required to ask that, right? You can't have an NBA conversation and not say the words Golden State. So we managed to sneak that in there. And all week, all this drama, and now it looks like this whole thing may be falling apart. If you missed it, the Celtics, obviously they trade Isaiah Thomas over to the Cavs. In the process of the physical, it looks like the Cavs have found some issues with Isaiah Thomas's hip that they're not comfortable with, and now reports are they may be asking for additional compensation. Mike Golic Jr., when you think about that, when you look at this trade, does it still have to happen in your mind?
Well, I would be more inclined to think that Boston is in a tougher spot with this one. Now, they're claiming that they were very upfront about everything with the Cavaliers as far as Isaiah's current health, the outlook for him as far as this season, and everything that comes up there. And clearly the Cavaliers' doctors feel different at this point. And so if you're Cleveland, the way I see it from them is you're in a unique situation. That's the only reason you were trying to get into this. But on the off chance that this trade were not to go through, you get back Kyrie Irving, and there's still a lot of interest around that. If you're Boston, you're trying to get rid of a guy in Isaiah Thomas who had a career year last year, who's at an all-time high, who's made it clear he wants to get paid big dollars, and based off what we see, someone around the league would be willing to do so. But I don't know if you're going to get this king's ransom, if you're going to get a better player in return for him the way you did with Kyrie Irving anywhere else at this point. And so if you're them, knowing you want to try and move him before that free agency comes up where he could just leave because you don't seem compelled to pay him, I don't know how Boston's not in the tougher spot of the two.
Doesn't this create some sort of an awkward situation, too? Because if you're Isaiah Thomas, you come back, at least Kyrie Irving, he went in and initiated this whole process. Isaiah Thomas has now been traded, which I can only equate to walking in one day, and it doesn't matter. Let's say you work for a computer company. You walk in one day, you go to sit down at your desk, and all your stuff is already in a box. And they're like, hey, by the way, you now work for the computer company down the street. We traded you. So, we're going to ask you to go somewhere else. That's fine, but when you get to your new office, if that suddenly falls through, how do you feel about driving back down the street to the old place that just essentially dumped you and said they don't want you there? I mean, it's a difficult thing in and of itself to take, and in the process of it, if the trade is being nixed because of hip health injury concerns, that's not easy to say. On top of that, then you have to look at it and say, what's his market value to anybody else? So it's not like he can suddenly insist he go somewhere else. He may be stuck where he is, and where he is, it's going to be human nature to feel very unwanted in the process.
It will be, but when you look at what the two are going back into, like Kyrie Irving is going back into a place and in a locker room potentially then where he was the one that said, I want out. So now you're looking at the rest of the guys in that locker room you have to play with who we already hear about Kyrie not talking to for long stretches during the playoffs and create an even weirder scenario. At least Isaiah, the guys he's mad at are on the top floor of that building. You can go back into that locker room and be like, listen, none of these guys tried to kick me to the curb. I didn't have any bad blood with them. This was the front office making a very clear distinction. So that at least affects less of the day-to-day for me than with Kyrie. But to your point, I think Isaiah is a lot harder to move if this doesn't go through, knowing what we know now more about the injury concerns that are stalling it than Kyrie.
I mean, Kyrie, at some point, if he's coming back, it's not like he's unpacking his bags. I mean, he'll come back and stay like an extended stay while he waits, and just waits to be moved somewhere else, because the fact is he knows he's not going to stay in Cleveland. I think the tougher situation for coming back is for Isaiah, because I'm not sure there's going to be another value that would make a ton of sense. Our own Adrian Wojnarowski talked about this, and he talked about it with Sage Steele on what these teams have to lose.
You got to get his name right for them to play the right sound fits.
Wojnarowski. You know, this is
Wojnarowski.
This is I do fine when you're not with me. It's when you're with me that it suddenly creates the awkwardness. But
I strike fear into your heart.
Well, that's what I think of. I don't think of a big cuddly bear. I think of a fear. Right there.
Well, no, and rightly so. Listen, but you got to at some point start to get. I mean, we're getting towards that point where Woj has now been here long enough where Wojnarowski has to roll off the tongue a little quicker. And someone not really well known for being a wordsmith, coming from the family I come from. I mean, if my dad and I are the beacons of hope for pronouncing Wojnarowski right at this company, you guys all have to take a long, hard look in the mirror and say what's up.
You know what? I've done staggeringly well. And for anyone that doesn't know, Golic Jr. and I did some Mike and Mike together, and I managed to butcher the name so much that they started trying to put it in to the update just to make me say it as often as possible. So here's Woj with with what his thoughts on what they have to lose if the trade falls through.
Why all of a sudden is this seemingly a surprise to Cleveland?
What Cleveland's going to contend here is that they were under the impression that Isaiah would be ready sooner into the season than the sense they've gotten after their physical, that this could be a longer rehabilitation process than they were led to believe when they agreed to the trade.
What's your gut, though, as we wrap this up? What's your gut as far as what happens?
Again, I think both teams have a lot to lose here and are going to work hard to finalize this deal this week.
I mean, there is a point where when you look at the loss versus the gains in this situation, we were talking a week ago about what this meant for both teams on a positive side. Now you're looking at it saying this has got to be like that really awkward moment where you're trying to go, like your ex is taking you back, right? Your ex essentially traded you, and now everybody's sort of wised up, and you're going back.
And now it becomes, if you're Boston, are you willing to give things up? Because Cleveland had that pipe dream going into this of trying to pry away like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and some of those young guys that Boston just wasn't willing to deal. But we know Boston's got, more future first-round picks under their control or other teams' control. They've got things that they can deal with this. It's just a matter of, if Boston, are you so compelled to do this that you're willing to break off your post and say, no, we're up front like you're beating the drum with now, or do you kind of admit defeat because you need to move this and just throw another pick in there, throw something knowing you're not giving up return on one of those actual young players that you've drafted?
But at some point, you're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. At some point, don't you have to look at this and say, we were already questioning the value a week ago, and so now you want to throw more in there? I mean, negotiation 101, sure. I mean, Cleveland maybe, let's just say, since you're all conspiracy theorists, that the fight ended at exactly the moment that Mayweather wanted to end the fight. If we're going to take that conspiracy theory, you can look at this and say, all right, well, our doctors are going to do a physical, and then from that physical, we're going to decide we want one of these players that we wanted from the get-go, and we're going to get even more. A week ago, we were questioning the trade and the quid pro quo of it. And you can't tell me that if more pieces are added, that it doesn't begin to feel even more unbalanced from the outside looking in.
This is about what Danny Ainge is willing to do, because it's basically put in a position now where Danny Ainge, the guy who we pride on making all the right moves with the Celtics and building up this nice war chest of number one picks and these different things that become such advantages and talking points about him, is he willing to swallow some pride and throw that pick out knowing that they've got to move Isaiah, or is he going to say, no, I'm not going to give up on the way I've built this, we'll stick it out with Isaiah, and then potentially face the prospect of looking ugly on the back end of this when Isaiah hits free agency? If you can't move him before that because of anything else, if he falls up off this perch of that 29 points per game or whatever it was last season, and coupled with this injury, and all of a sudden you don't get the same returns, do you then just put off the amount of time until you look bad again?
I mean, but ultimately, for what? If the flip side of it is you give up more, all right, you gave up even more. You gave up an additional draft pick so that you can have the opportunity to lose to Golden State. And you can have the opportunity to maybe not even be better than Cleveland in the eyes of some. So you gave up even more equity to accomplish what exactly? I mean, why would you in that situation give up more equity when there's really nothing for you to gain when it comes to, we've been talking about participation trophies. That's about the best that they have a shot at. The Celtics have a shot at a participation trophy. Whoopee. Do you give up more for that?
Well, you do if you believe that you can re-sign a guy who's 25 years old, a perennial all-star, and now a champion coming off of his time in Cleveland that a lot of people believe has benefited from learning, growing under that championship environment with LeBron James. If you believe the coupling Gordon Hayward and those young pieces and a lot more of those future draft picks with those two guys in particular can make you better, then yeah, it's kind of like a quarterback in the NFL. Maybe there's no amount that you don't give up when you've gotten to this point already.
Yeah, but at some point, if you give all that up and it doesn't get you to the spot where you want to be, you at least have to have the plan on the additional pieces you're going to add. And if you're giving up future equity, or if you're making the team around him worse to do that for a player that we were already questioning the value of in this trade, I have to wonder how it puts Boston in a short-term or long-term situation that allows them to be so much better that they can actually win an NBA championship, because that ultimately is the goal.
Listen, we've been allowing Danny Ainge to keep building for the future for a long time. I don't know why we'd stop now. And Kyrie Irving is still, in my mind, investing in the future. It's just doing it in a way that's less uncertain, maybe less hope-inspiring than draft picks that we can build into whatever we want. But still, as a young guy in this league who's one of the best at his position, I think it still can be an investment in the future if you believe you can ultimately re-sign him when he hits free agency.
He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. When we come back, we'll change gears. Over the weekend in preseason football, yet again, we have a player taking a knee for the national anthem. 49ers safety Eric Reid takes the knee. The question is, how does it make you feel, and do we even want to react anymore? We'll address that next. It's The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Right Time with Bomani Jones. But Bomani's not here. Instead, it's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. They're letting us hold down the fort. 1-888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You guys know ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance. And The Right Time is brought to you by Firestone Complete Auto Care. Keeping cars running newer, longer, whatever you drive a Firestone. So, Mike Golic Jr., we have another, this is sort of like the weekly thing. We come out of the preseason, and I feel like you're looking at Twitter at this point, not you specifically, but you, the society, is looking at Twitter, and they're keeping in track on. It's like a running list: who's standing, who's not standing, who's sitting, who's protesting. Everybody's trying to figure out what every single person is doing in the process of the national anthem at this point. And it's almost interesting to me in that sense that I feel like we're keeping score of everything going on. So we now have a situation where 49ers safety Eric Reid is taking a knee for the national anthem. He knelt with Colin Kaepernick last year. He said he was not going to kneel during the anthem this season, but that changed on Sunday. Does that impact you in some way? I mean, are we at a point? And for me personally, I'll just throw it out there. And I know that this isn't always popular. For me personally, I like my sports and my music to be escapism. I don't really care about my athletes or my entertainers trying to change the world. I just care about enjoying the sort of some time away. And I think that there's a lot of sports fans that I've talked to when I've hosted other shows on the network that are in that same boat. You know, that there's a point where it's like, let's just sit back and have some fun and watch some sports. So for me, this just doesn't have the hitting impact at this point. I think that, I'm looking at it saying, okay, he knelt. I don't really know where to go with it from there. What hits you about it?
Well, I think at this point what hits me about it is it's starting to become more commonplace, and so people are starting to actually ask. I heard the turn happen a while ago where people said, all right, we've seen kneeling, now tell us what you're actually trying to talk about. And I'm like, that's great, because that's all anyone wanted to do from the beginning was get you to just ask about what they were trying to support. And so now we've gotten some of that, and that's why I thought it was interesting hearing from Eric Reid speaking after the game, because he said he wasn't going to kneel, and then he felt affected by current events and went out and had this to say about it after the game.
Just had to change of heart. A lot of thinking, a lot of praying, talking to Colin. When we started last year, if you recall, we said that our goal was to raise awareness and shed light on the issues that were happening in our country. I think we accomplished that goal. What I was upset about was the narrative, the false narratives that was being told about us. People were saying that we're un-American, that we were against police entirely and the military, and that just wasn't true. And at first I thought that was a small sacrifice to pay to get the word out, to again raise that awareness. And I settled with thinking raising that awareness was victory. Then fast forward to Charlottesville, and the country sees what an un-American protest really looks like. And that's when I had my change of heart, because what Colin, Eli, and I did was a peaceful protest fueled by our faith in God to help make our country a better place. And I feel like I need to regain control of that narrative and not let people say that what we're doing is un-American, because it's not. It's completely American. We're doing it because we want equality for everybody. We want our country to be a better place. So that's why I decided to resume the protest.
So you hear that, and you say, all right, as we continue to look, because I'm with you, we've seen a lot of the same things, and so people kind of, especially in our line of work, like you said, maybe get tired of hearing about it the same way, but at least there you hear a thoughtful explanation of, I want to show people the contrast of what we've been doing versus what you saw happen in Charlottesville, because for so long what we did was demonized in a way that this truly bad thing that we all saw happen in Charlottesville should have been, and now you can hopefully see the difference when they're placed side by side. That's at least saying, all right, look at what we've been talking about and look at it at this new way.
So I guess we're switching roles at this point, because early in the show you were the cynical, Mayweather decided when he wanted to end the bout, like the sort of jaded Mike Golic Jr. right there, little jaded for Gojo. I'm going to take the other side at this point and look at it and say, I think on this particular issue, so many people have made up their minds what it's about, and nobody's listening anymore. So everybody's yelling, but nobody's listening. And I don't think that anything that happens now is going to necessarily change that. There are certain times, if you've ever been in a relationship with somebody where all you guys do is yell, you realize at some point there's one or two things you can do. You can fix your communication style, or you can just end the relationship. And more often than not, it ends up being a end the relationship sort of situation, because you can't necessarily change the way people communicate. And you can go all day long communicating what you're trying to say. But, for example, I took a communication class years and years ago, and part of what they taught you in that class was how to convert your message into who's receiving it. So if you want to say something, if I want to say something to you, and I know you receive communication a certain way, then I have to actually translate my words to the best way to communicate to you if I want you to receive it the right way. So we took this whole team building thing back then to try and learn these skills. And what it really taught me is that most people don't do that. So you can take a knee and you can be right. And you can look at it and you cannot appreciate that someone's taking a knee, and you can also be right. I mean, it's in this entire process, nobody's really talking to anybody. Everybody's, or let me say it this way, nobody's listening to anybody. Everybody's just talking to everybody. And at some point for me, that's where I check out and say, I want my entertainment.
Well, I would disagree with that, because a lot of these guys are actually going out and doing things in their community. I mean, Malcolm Jenkins, who came up in this recently because Chris Long threw his hat behind him, has been out doing things. He's been going and trying to bridge the gap in all this. So to say that one side is not, one side is yelling about this or not changing their style, these guys have adapted at every turn when all of the things thrown at them are saying, all right, well, show us that you're actually doing things, affect change, don't just talk about it.
I'm not saying that nothing's being done. In fact, that's not at all what I'm saying. And if that's how it conveys, then that's on me. I'm not saying nothing's being done. And I think that you can look at these protests and you can say, hey, there are several examples of athletes going out and putting their money where their protest is, putting their time where their protest is, all of these things. What I'm saying is that the protest is no longer being received by people viewing the protest. You've already decided, for most of America, you've decided where you stand on somebody taking a knee or standing. And once you've made that decision on it, you're not listening to what anyone else has to say. So it's one of those things where you're, like you said earlier, a circular discussion. That's what we're all having at this point.
I think I just disagree in what I've heard so far from the feedback. What I've heard is, okay, we've seen the kneeling. Now, what are you actually talking about? And my point is that was where we were supposed to go all along. So I think maybe now we have a chance of getting somewhere productive.
But even in that sense, to me, I look at some of the conversation about who's been doing what. It's a very curious situation to try and figure out how any of us will actually listen to any of us in the process. We'll continue the conversation, but next up, conversation, speaking of, we'll have one with Jeff Darlington, one of our favorites. We'll break down a bunch of big news in the NFL, and we'll do that next up on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. And if you guys, I've been telling you this forever, if you travel for business, stop wasting your time pricing your flights and hotels at the same old sites you used to go to. The only site you need, there's only one of them, Upside.com. It's quick and easy for Upside to show you the exact flights you're looking for and the big name hotels you want to stay at. You can buy them separately or you can bundle them together. The more you bundle, the more you save, the bigger the gift card you receive to places like Amazon.com every time you buy a business travel package using Upside. Their concierge level of service, second to none. You get the VIP treatment while still paying low prices, and their expert navigators are always available 24/7 through phone, chat, social, and email to help at any time. Here's what you need to do. Upside's the real deal for buying your business trips. You got to give them a try, and right now, when you use promo code Bomani, you're guaranteed to get at least a $100 Amazon.com gift card on your package purchase. That code, Bomani, gets you a $100 $100 gift card free. Upside.com, the better way to buy business travel. Minimum purchase required. Seek site for complete details.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. We're in for Bomani Jones. 1-888-SAY-ESPN. That's 1-888-729-3776. ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. Now you can test drive Snapshot to see how much you could save before switching to Progressive. Visit progressive.com/snapshot. All of our guests appear on the right time via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Speaking of which, Jeff Darlington joins us right now. And Jeff, one of our favorite NFL reporters out there for everything that's going on right now. I want to start with the Vontaze Burfict situation, 5-game suspension. Did that surprise you when you first heard it, Jeff?
Yes, it did, honestly. I mean, I did not see it coming at all, and I don't know that anybody really did. I mean, the hit itself got so little attention to the point where it wasn't even flagged. So, yeah, it was definitely surprising, and I think even after further review, it continues to be surprising, if not for the name on the back of his jersey. I mean, that's the one thing I think that nobody can essentially be surprised by, right?
So, Jeff, I know this appeal is going to get heard on Tuesday alongside the Ezekiel Elliott suspension appeal. Which do you think has a better chance of getting reduced at this point?
You know, both feel like they could potentially, but they're both such different types of situations. Burfict feels like it could be one of those things where it gets reduced, like, hey, we told you to chill. We have this point of emphasis. You know, we'll reduce it by a game, that kind of a thing. Whereas Ezekiel Elliott's such a much different situation that's going to be I mean, this is going to go down the same road, in my opinion, in my prediction, I should say, of Deflategate. No matter what happens, if that suspension gets upheld, I could see this creating another legal drama for the NFL and the NFLPA, one that continues to linger for months. Whether there's courtroom stays and all that type of stuff, we'll have to see. But I think the two situations, while they're happening coincidentally on the same day in New York, are incredibly different. Will definitely be, and in very different results as well.
We're talking to Jeff Darlington, and Jeff sort of set a baseline for me of what the punishment. But if Vontaze Burfict's name was not attached to it, and that same hit happens from someone else, what's the baseline of what that punishment would and should be?
A fine, honestly. I mean, a hefty fine. It's that. I don't know. When you look at it, and I'm not suggesting that the NFL did not make the right call, because Burfict has lost the benefit of the doubt. I guess the thing that I have trouble grasping is the ambiguity of the rule. The point of emphasis this year, it's not a new rule, it's a point of emphasis that a defenseless receiver has to be protected if he's hit from the side or from the back. And if you look at that play, to me it looks like it's close enough to the front where you could maybe justify like a penalty in a bang-bang moment. But beyond that, I don't know. I mean, it's within 5 yards. Like, it doesn't feel that illegal to me. So baseline, I would say a fine, even though in March at the owners' meetings, teams were essentially told that refs have been empowered to eject or suspend players for hits like that. I just don't think that this specific hit falls under that umbrella. So truly, baseline, I'd say a fine at this point.
Jeff, switching gears a little bit, the Patriots dealt a pretty impactful injury blow this weekend. How much do you think the loss of Julian Edelman is going to impact this offense this weekend, knowing what it's looked like in the past, going back as recently as 2015?
So I struggle with this one because, we talk so much about next man up with the Patriots, and I get it because they have proven to be really good at that. But I just think that's so much easier said than done. And the one thing I was talking to people at the Patriots, they were saying that his communication with Tom Brady is so good and so essential, especially in third down situations, that that's not easily replaceable. The good news is that Chris Hogan has had a really exceptional camp and seems to be understanding a very complex offense this year in year two, so he could be the guy on the rise to potentially replace Edelman. And of course, for the Patriots fans, they're probably really appreciating that they got Brandon Cooks because he's just been looking like a beast this training camp too. So they've got the pieces in place to replace Edelman. I think that it's not as easy as we're all making it sound by saying, next man up or whatever.
We're talking to ESPN sports reporter Jeff Darlington. Jeff, over the weekend, DeShone Kizer named the starter in Cleveland. Blake Bortles named the starter in Jacksonville. Will that be significant for either team in your mind at the end of this year?
DeShone Kizer, yes. Blake Bortles feels like he's at the end of the road. I mean, I understand. I was in Jacksonville this past weekend, and I get where they're coming from. I thought the idea of potentially giving Chad Henne the start was off base. I think we all know what Chad Henne is, at least, and I'm sure this is frustrating to Jags fans, but at least go down the road with Blake Bortles and burn that house to the ground. Find out for sure that that he's not your guy, because you know what you have in Chad Henne. Nobody thinks that Chad Henne is going to have a renaissance and become an NFL starter. So at least spend the time on that third overall pick. If it doesn't click, then move on. But it's not like the Jaguars. They have a pretty good defense, but it's not like Chad Henne is the difference between getting them to the playoffs and not. I mean, this is the difference between getting 7 wins instead of 5, maybe. So I don't think that's that significant. DeShone Kizer, yeah. I mean, I think that the Browns, the only thing I question here is the fact that, DeShone Kizer, they didn't necessarily want him in the situation where he's starting week 1. And if that's the case, and they've said that, then why was Cody Kessler and Brock Osweiler your other options? Because they were essentially, I mean, the writing was on the wall. Kizer, as soon as they drafted him, when you looked at that depth chart, was going to wind up with the starting job. And I don't necessarily know that puts him in a great position, but he's at least a guy that gives them some hope. We'll just see what happens when the bullets start flying, if he can also continue to kind of keep on the trajectory that has been this training camp.
Jeff, last one, and then we'll let you go. How's Lake Compound today?
Dude, can you hear it?
We heard the giggling and the splashing in the background. We figured you had to be at the picnic.
I wish you could see where I was at. I'm trying to escape. For your listeners, the company the ESPN picnic is today. I don't know where you guys are at because it's free booze, and I figured the two of you would be here for that. But
that's why they didn't let us there, Jeff. They actually specifically said, no, not you two.
So I'm always on the road and never really in Bristol. Lately I've been doing studio stuff, and I showed up today, and people are like, company picnic? They rent out an entire amusement park. I had no idea that this was happening. So I'm here, and as you can hear, it's a good time.
Jeff, we appreciate you joining us from the picnic, man. Have a couple extra funnel cakes for your boy, all right? We won't be able to get over there.
You got it, guys. No problem.
Thanks, Jeff. You can follow him on Twitter, @Jeff Darlington. It is one of the great, why did we not get to do a live remote? Golic Jr., we could have hung out at the picnic and talked to people as the show went on. The show would have gotten very interesting.
So as people probably know, my dad's been working at this company for a while, so I used to go to this picnic all the time as a little kid, and I was so jacked up because as a chubby little 10-year-old kid, all you're focused on is the fact that you can go in here and get free fried Oreos and pop whenever and wherever you want, and there's no line for any of the rides. So the ESPN company picnic is a hell of a scene.
Free fried Oreos and grown-up pop still sounds like a delicious and fantastic way to spend a Monday, if you ask me. When we come back, Vontaze Burfict facing a 5-game suspension for the illegal hit. Does he not have any benefit of the doubt? Golic Jr. will break down whether or not he thinks the hit was even illegal in the first place. It's the right time with Bomani Jones. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz.
The right time with Bomani Jones.
To the right time. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests on the right time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And we just had Jeff Darlington on live from the ESPN corporate picnic theme park.
He's caused
adventure.
caused a lot of drama in the Golic family now. I'm starting to get texts from mom and dad. Mom had no idea the picnic was today. Feels like dad withheld that information for her, and now she is very upset.
Well,
very upset. Good luck, Dad.
You never withhold open bar info in my marriage anyway. That's a cardinal sin. So we just talked a little bit to Jeff about it, and I want to talk to you, Golic Jr., about this Vontaze Burfict thing, because when you think about the fact that it's a 5-game suspension for an illegal hit in the middle of a game, that many are questioning whether it was actually illegal or whether it was legal. It should be noted it wasn't even a penalty in the course of the game. when you saw, first and foremost, as somebody that played the game, when you saw the hit, did it strike you as illegal?
No, it's jarring, like, in that moment. Those are one of the hits that if it were anyone else but Vontaze Burfict, you'd replay that, you'd go, man, that's what I'm talking about, and you'd move on. But because Vontaze Burfict's kind of got this history, you knew they were going to take a long, hard look at it, one-fold because of him, and two-fold because this is a rule that they just changed this spring. And one thing that the NFL does every year is when the competition committee votes on new rules that they put in place, one of them you heard Jeff mention was essentially what amounts to the targeting rule from college, where refs can throw a player out during the game because of an egregious and unnecessary hit, multiple unsportsmanlike. That was something they played around with last year unofficially. And now this year voted on for sure. But the other thing they changed was the defenseless receiver rule. They included receivers in those positions that were either getting hit from behind or in the head and neck, and that includes within 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. So that's why it applies to this particular situation where you had a back that was still within that 5 yards coming out of the backfield.
Well, he could have avoided all this after the hit if he had just gotten him some flowers. Nothing makes a summer birthday, anniversary, or a staggering hit more magical than 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you'll get another dozen absolutely free. Just go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. And I think that at some point, the difficulty in this is separating Vontaze Burfict from the actual hit, because we can agree that he has a reputation that he's earned. He's earned every piece of the reputation he has. And that means that because of past action, we suspect every time he does something that he's in the wrong. But that doesn't necessarily mean he was actually in the wrong in this situation. It's difficult because it's one of those borderline moments that, as you mentioned, any other player, we're replaying it over and over again. A few years ago, it would have been a hit highlight on Madden. I mean, we would have looked at it
on Jacked Up, man. We used to do that segment right here. That would have been Jacked Up number one play of the week.
And instead of that, you're looking at a guy in Vontaze Burfict being, because of the lost paychecks, $353. That's a hefty fine for something that's borderline. I mean, you're talking about over almost $900,000 at this point for a hit that we're all looking at and saying, well, I don't know, legal, not legal, legal, not legal. I mean, even if he's been a bad guy, that seems like a dangerous and strange precedent to come out of nowhere for this guy. It's like they're using him as an example.
Well, it's exactly what they're using him for. And I'm telling you, this is how it works. During training camp, the league sends out a videotape that makes up and shows these are the rule changes that we're telling our referees to emphasize. We're saying this play is, they put, video examples. This is the wrong way to do this. This is the right way to do this. And we've seen this come up a lot in the last few years because of the change in emphasis on where the hits come from in the NFL as head and neck injuries become more of a focal point. And so with this, what it sounds like to me is the NFL said, we're making an example out of this because this is something we wanted to emphasize right away. We've got a guy that's been a repeat offender on some of these head and neck shots in the past, and now we can let everyone know, listen, this is what's going to happen on the very worst end of this. Because to your point, stands to lose base salary $882,353. That is almost the same amount that he's lost so far already in his career, which is crazy. He's been flagged 16 times for unnecessary roughness and fined almost $800,000 already.
Let me just be very clear. As someone that I feel, I like to refer to myself as frugal. My friends may say I'm cheap. For me, if I get like 2 speeding tickets, I never speed again. Like, because there's a point that nothing is worth the $150. Like, it's just not worth it, So I'm looking at what's the not worth it point for him.
This becomes interesting because it's what are you asking him to do? And this is clearly a move that's predicated on taking yet another thing away from defenders. Because I heard my dad ranting and raving about this morning, and it's true. This used to be football, and I understand you're trying to protect against head and neck injuries, but when this hit, you go back and look, doesn't look like it was a hit to the head and neck. All of a sudden, all you're doing is removing another tool from the belt from guys on one side of the ball that are already put at a disadvantage. And the rest of us are saying, all right, well, we know this league as a whole prioritizes offense. But, man, when you're costing a guy this kind of money because you want to make a point on a rule that's got that as the ultimate end, man, that seems like it's gone too far. And that's why ultimately I think this one will get shortened a bit when they hear the appeal.
And at some point, this is going to be the precedent. This is going to be the mark, the line in the sand, and that's the opportunity they have here. So however they turn around and adjust this, they've at least set a bar for what is expected for these guys and for what the punishment will be, and that's always a challenge in today's NFL is to understand the bar of what punishment will be, where punishment has been, and what will be happening in the future. Floyd Mayweather attempted to bet on himself. He was denied. We'll tell you about it next up. It's Bomani Jones' Right Time.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to the Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million. What color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo! Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. For less than $10 per person, per meal, Blue Apron delivers seasonal recipes along with pre-portioned ingredients to make delicious home-cooked meals. You can choose from a variety of new recipes each week, or you can let the Blue Apron culinary team surprise you. They don't repeat recipes within a year. You won't get bored. Right now, they've got summer vegetable and egg paninis. They've got the soy-glazed pork and rice cakes with bok choy and marinated green beans. Customize your recipes each week based on your preferences. Blue Apron has several delivery options, so you can choose what fits your needs. No weekly commitment, so you only get deliveries when you want them. Each meal comes with a step-by-step, easy-to-follow recipe card and pre-portioned ingredients and can be prepared in 40 minutes or less. Guaranteed. Blue Apron's freshness guarantee promises every ingredient in your delivery arrives ready to cook, or they'll make it right. So check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/Bomani. You'll love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so don't wait. That's blueapron.com/Bomani. Blue Apron, a better way to cook.
The City Double Cash Card presents tips for cheering on your kids. Number 9, be supportive.
Hey, son, stay focused on everything I'm shouting.
You heard your father! Encouraging words filled with pressure!
Go get him. We love you, buddy. There it is.
Wouldn't it be great if everyone said what they meant? The City Double Cash Card does. It lets you earn double cash back with 1% when you buy and 1% as you pay. The City Double Cash Card. Double means double.
Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz, in for Bomani Jones. Floyd Mayweather tried to bet on himself. I got to tell you, I kind of love that. Like, there's a point where I have no problem with that. I think if you want to go in and bet on yourself, that's fantastic. If you're going to go in and bet on the other guy, I see an issue. But if you're going to bet on yourself, just in general,
to win a fight. So you'd put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I have no problem with that. As long as if you can prove that he bet on himself and did not bet against himself, I have no problem with that whatsoever. But I look at this situation for Mayweather and say, hey, he went in, attempted to place a $400,000 bet on the fight. Now, what is tricky is the fight ending under 9.5 rounds. He was trying to bet on a specific length. That gets a little trickier.
Especially when the length is exactly where it ended up finishing.
Yeah, so I think that's a little, like, if you want to tell me that he wants to bet just generally on, hey, I'm going to whoop that butt, I'm all good on that. Like, if you and I were going to go to the cafeteria and we were going to have it out and we were going to have, like, an old Greco-Roman style wrestling match, and I chose to bet on myself, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. It gets a little different if you're trying to change the outcome, but if it's just a general bet on me, I think that's good.
Well, and that became the discrepancy. So Floyd tried to place a $400,000 bet on that, but according to source, there was concern over the legality of a fighter betting on anything other than a straight-up win, which caused that delay. He tried to bet on himself to win by knockout, was unhappy to having to wait to place the wager, so he told SportsCenter he gave a friend $400,000 to bet on his behalf, but that friend was only allowed to place that side bet for $87,000. So woe is Floyd as he walks away with his $350,000 purse. Or $350 million purse, excuse me.
$350 million
That's a million with an M.
Gojo, I would like to think that, if you ever need me to place a $400,000 bet for you, if you'll just hand me the suitcase, I'll take care of everything for you, my friend. It'll be very easy. You just hand me $400,000 in cash, and I'll make sure that it's well taken care of.
No, I'm sure that cash I'll ever seek that cash coming back towards me again in my lifetime on that. But, like, that's something so unique to boxing, I feel like, and just to events taking place in Vegas like that's uniquely possible. Like, that's just part of the scene out there, that you can walk right up to that the day of the fight, and A, in boxing it's going to be cool, and B, in Vegas you're in a place that can so directly facilitate that. Like, you were live on the ground there and placed a bet that was, let's say, slightly less substantial.
$50. I put a whopping $50 down. I felt like I had to do something, right? Like, I felt like I had to go out there and be a little part of the action. But like I said earlier, I am notoriously frugal. So difficult for me to put money down on really anything. But I will say Vegas was not nearly the zoo I expected it to be. It was crowded, yes, and as you would expect in any fight atmosphere, it was a very aggressive crowd. But it wasn't having, frankly, you'll appreciate this as someone, Mike Golic Jr., that enjoys country music. The crowd was not that much bigger for this event as it typically is for the Academy of Country Music Awards. It wasn't like a zoo where you couldn't get into places. You were able to get into clubs pretty easily, other than Saturday night itself, which, again, you could still buy your way in. I'm just too cheap for that. So it wasn't the zoo that I thought it was going to be in Vegas for the actual event.
So this is good then, but because you got exactly what you paid for out of the experience, right? Like,
yeah.
You went over there, you were in the $50 bet range, you just wanted to be entertained by the fight, and we saw a lot of that. We saw a lot of the reaction was, all right, this fight was entertaining enough to justify the $100 I put down, the $50 I bet on this, because I didn't really expect much more. Like, coming off of Mayweather-Pacquiao, my expectations were super low. I just wanted to go, have a few beers, have a good time, see something that gave me enough action and enough justification, even if a lot of it felt according to plan for both parties, especially Floy Mayweather's party, and you were cool with that, right?
Yeah. No, I think that was sort of, for me, it was a lot like, I've used this analogy tonight because the night before, went to Britney Spears. And so I took Sunny, my wife, to Britney Spears, and I sat down next to some high-rolling bigwigs, and they were all talking about how they came in for the fight, and their wives were like, hey, I want to go to Britney Spears. So there was a lot of that. I look at this fight a lot like Britney Spears. Yes, it's lip syncing and, she can't dance, but there's enough of a spectacle around her that it's still entertaining. And that's all the fight was. It was an entertaining spectacle to me. Never get tired of it. Never get tired of it. I wish it had been J-Lo or the Backstreet Boys, but Britney was fine.
So, all right. So, again, that was a good point about expectations. Any chance to bring in Britney Spears, I'm cool within the flow of conversation. But for me, the expectations took a little bit of a different turn outside of the ring. Like, we got exactly what I expected in the ring. What we saw ringside was a completely different animal, because we know half the fun with the fights is seeing the people that show up. And one of the crazy points I saw made, and the guys brought this up on the Dan Le Batard show today with Stu Gatz, that LeBron James was in the arena at the fight, and first off, had better seats than J.R. Smith, who clearly came with LeBron James, which is his own batch of awkward, but was also behind Steve Harvey. LeBron James didn't have the best seats in the house that night and was seated behind Steve Harvey. How often do we imagine that happens for LeBron anymore?
First of all, you can't fault LeBron for not sitting with the guys he came with, because let's face it, if you and I were going to the fight together and then you got offered better seats than I got, you'd leave me in a heartbeat. I mean, I would be sitting several rows back, and every once in a while you'd turn around just to make sure I was doing okay, right? Like, you just go to the better seat. But the question is, at some point to me, when I'm sitting there looking around and I see all the people in front of me, it's okay. Like, if I look at you and I say, okay, you know what, Mike Golic Jr., way bigger star than I am, he should have a better seat than I have. That's fine. And if you were sitting there and you looked up and you said, you know what, Stephen A. is sitting in front of me, you'd understand that. I'm not sure how LeBron justifies in his head seeing Steve Harvey sit ahead of him. I mean, did I miss that? Is he such a big star?
Well, I guess I get that outside of the world of sports, maybe it doesn't carry weight. LeBron seems to be more of a transcendent name like that. But, man, like, forget Steve Harvey. I saw the guy that snuck in pretending like he was a part of security, taking pictures with celebrities down in the rows in front of LeBron. Like, Fitzy, that could have been you. Brian Custer was trying to put you on game before and tell you to sneak in, to do that exact move. You could have been sitting closer than LeBron James, and you passed it up.
The real question is, if I had tried and it had not worked out for me, would you have bailed me out? See, now we know why I didn't try.
Right, you got to expect me. Brian Custer was right there offering to help you.
Well, Custer was busy looking dapper and doing a heck of a broadcast. I thought about sneaking in. Here's the problem. We went to like an all-you-can-drink brunch that afternoon, and I don't think Sonny would have been in any condition to come down and bail me out. So I would have had to spend the night in jail. And I think we both know that I'm probably not a night in jail sort of guy. Like it doesn't work well for me.
No, you're not cut out for that life. But like I'm still hung up on this LeBron thing because you look at like what happened, and it's basically how is LeBron at the place that he is, probably the most well-known, successful North American athlete we have. I think we do those fame lists, and he's damn near the top for whatever we've got here in North America outside of European soccer stars. He's looking down, and at what point is he saying, like, man, like, there shouldn't be anyone in front of me? Like, I had a weird moment that, like, in my own little world was kind of similar to this. I was at a John Mayer concert this last Sunday, and being a Bachelorette franchise fan, I saw the dude Matt from the last cycle of The Bachelorette with Rachel as the Bachelorette. And I looked over there and I recognized him, which first I realized, it says a lot more about me than anything else. Mm-hmm. But I see, like, groups of teenage girls going around there, a lot of the same core demo for him and John Mayer. And I looked over there and I was like, oh, maybe I'll go say something. And I go, wait a minute. This guy didn't even win this cycle of The Bachelorette. Should I be more famous than this guy? And, like, that's not pumping me up. That's just saying I don't know if that guy's all that famous. But then I realized that was kind of snobbish tactics. But we kind of found out talking before the show that everyone here's got a little version of that, right? Like, we found out that Shannon is actually the resident hotel snob on the staff. That was enlightening.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely a level of hotel that I'm not going to stoop to. No, I worked in hospitality, full-service hotel for 10 years. So, yeah, I'm not going lower than my standards at this point. Can't do it.
Like, unless you can get some sort of, like, rewards points for the stay or there's, like, a special room you can get into with the key card, you're not messing with it.
I'm absolutely hotel snob at this point, yes. And I expect you – I have points, and I expect you to treat me like a Diamond member. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. Like I say, you're going in the separate line. You want all the perks. Like, no, I don't want this on points. Give me the drink cards. I want to be able to come down here and get what's owed to me. You will treat me as such.
I have no problem with that. I mean, that's the same way I acted to a certain extent in Vegas. And I'll admit it, like, Sonny's a concert snob at this point.
Your
like,
wife, Sonny, yeah.
Yeah, my wife, we spent so much time since I toured as a musician, we spent so much time of our lives getting, great seats or getting to stand on the side of the stage or, like, getting to hang out, backstage. Like, that sort of became ingrained. And at first she was very appreciative of it. Not that she's not still, but there's a moment now where if she's not in the first 15, 20 rows of a show, I'm not sure she really cares.
So, you guys saw Britney Spears this weekend. Was that good enough for her?
No. I mean, I think we were right smack in the middle, but we were a good solid, like, 30, 40 rows back. There were closer seats. And her whole thing at this point is, like, if I can't smell their breath, then, I'm probably not close enough. And I can't even fault that. Like, that's what happens. Like, she got used to that. And now I can't just take that luxury away. I mean, there's a point where that's just sort of happened. It just sort of happened. You've got to have something.
Listen, I told you mine. I guess I'm just saying if LeBron James is cool not sitting the closest possible to the fight, maybe we all got to take a look at ourselves. Like, maybe we're doing too much.
No. I think this isn't about LeBron. This is about Steve Harvey. All right, Steve Harvey is just that awesome. And I just want to see the look on his face somewhere when they walk in and they say, sorry, LeBron, you're back there. Steve Harvey's up here. Always in the front row for every event. Bobby Marks, one of our favorites. We'll get Bobby's thoughts on if you and I could ever sit in front of LeBron James. And also, we'll get Bobby's thoughts on all the important stuff going down. What's going to happen with the mega trade that seems to be falling apart before our very eyes? We'll break that next. It's The Right Time with Bomani Jones. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
We had to go with a little bit of Otis Redding for the Old Soul Song of the Day. But this one, transcends multiple generations because a lot of you guys know the Black Crowes version of this. But do yourself a favor. Go back and discover the original because, like everything Otis Redding does, it always have more soul than anybody could ever possibly handle. Hard to handle. That's the Old Soul Song of the Day. Brought to you by Pizza Hut. Turn every dollar you spend on pizza into unlimited points for free pizza with Pizza Hut's Hut Rewards program. Sign up today for double points because no one out-pizzas the Hut.
This is nice for me because I knew coming into this week that when the Old Soul Song of the Day came up, because listen, I'm a fan of the show, so I know what to expect around this time every day, but I knew being on here with Jason Fitz, who if you're going to dub me football guy, then that makes you music guy, would have all that we needed as far as this goes. So I was safe from any work for this segment.
I'm going to take some pride all week in really trying to find us the best old soul song of the day that I possibly can. So we're going to dig deep into the archives and sort of get as much great stuff there as we can. Speaking of great stuff, Bobby Marks, all of our guests appear on the right time, appear via the Sil Penzo Performance Line. I'm all choked up, Bobby. Otis Redding does that to me. Bobby Marks, ESPN NBA insider. So, Bobby, right out of the gate, if Mike Golic Jr. and I walked into the fight, do you think that we would get to sit in front of LeBron James? Have we reached that combined level of fame?
You might, but I think LeBron would probably have the usher come over and remove you as soon as you got there.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. We'll ask you a true NBA question, though. The trade between the Cavs and the Celtics may be falling apart between our in front of our very eyes. Do you have a latest on it?
I would be surprised, guys, if this deal does fall apart. I mean, I really do. I know we're still 3 days removed from the deadline for both teams either avoiding this or approving, the deal. I think there's too much at stake here to lose for Cleveland. You know, we've heard the Kyrie Irving trade demands to have him come back, into the fold, 3 weeks from training camp. And then from Boston, I think Boston has a little bit more to lose here, especially where we know now the health of Isaiah Thomas, where he'll be, by the time, probably not ready when the season starts. It makes it look, with Cleveland, have him going through his physical here. And I would, if there's some added compensation, maybe, but I would really be surprised. I think there's just too big of a deal to have fall through here.
So, Bobby, what do you think ultimately ends up being what Boston would be willing to give up then? Because it sounds like Cleveland isn't going to stop until they get more out of this, knowing what they know now about Isaiah Thomas's health.
Well, the one thing I wouldn't give up, I wouldn't touch any of my young players, and I wouldn't touch any of my future assets with maybe my own draft pick, which is probably going to be in that 25 to 30 range in 2018. Possibly, I think maybe if push comes to shove, they've got a bunch of second rounds that, if I'm Danny Ainge, I would probably be willing to depart with. The one thing I wish the league had, and I know the NFL does, is that I wish you could put some draft with the draft compensation, some benchmarks where if Isaiah Thomas played or played less than a certain amount of games based on this prior injury here with the hip, then Cleveland would get an X amount of compensation. I wish the league did that. They don't, so that's kind of a moot point. But I think it would certainly. I think you'd have probably a deal done by now if you were able to do something like that.
We're talking to ESPN NBA insider Bobby Marks, and with all this future compensation or additional compensation that may have to be given in this trade, I guess my question, Bobby, is for what? If it's not going to make them contend for an NBA championship, why give up all of these pieces for Kyrie Irving?
Well, you're right. I mean, I think if you look at for Boston's sake, I think if you line it up right now, I think you're looking at, for Danny Ainge getting a 25-year-old healthy point guard who you're going to have for the next 2 years under contract and possibly 5 more versus an Isaiah Thomas who will be 29 in February, who will be in the last year of his contract, who you're not willing to pay $25-30 million. So I think that's kind of, if push comes to shove and you're willing to add another asset here, I thought the deal in itself, even with Isaiah's health, was fair enough. I really do. I think we're going down a little bit of a slippery slope here, and I hope a precedent isn't set where, there's trades to be made, and then teams all of a sudden, either go through the physical part. I understand from a health perspective and where, teams hold up a deal because now all of a sudden we're asking for more, and I hope we're not going down that road for any deal in the future.
So, Bobby, listen, on the off chance that it does go down that road and we have something that falls apart completely here for either side, for Cleveland, especially with Kyrie Irving, because we heard there are so many suitors, is there another team that would even make sense in all of this, or are they just as locked in?
Well, I think you're locked in right now. I mean, I don't see them ever getting anything as good as that Brooklyn pick and where that Nets pick could be, probably top 5. I am a huge Jay Crowder fan. I don't think you'll get a wing, at least on the contract as Crowder, for 3 years. So I think that's kind of where you have to weigh things. Is there a team, we've heard Milwaukee, do they have enough pieces to get a deal done? Possibly. But now we're getting back to, you're not getting back that point guard that you thought you were getting there. The big concern, at least for teams out west, is that the commitment of Kyrie Irving. I think if you're looking at maybe Phoenix and possibly even a team like Denver, I think they're looking at it more as a 2-year window where you have to sell him on the organization long term. I don't think you had to do that in Boston. I think it would have been 2 years, and then he would have signed a big contract in 2019. But to blow this deal up and kind of go back to the drawing board, I would certainly think you would have Kyrie in training camp when we start in 3 weeks here.
You can follow him on Twitter, guys, at BobbyMarks42, ESPN front office insider Bobby Marks. Bobby, thanks for your time, man. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
It's an interesting thought to really sit back and say, what's it like to have to walk this one back? You know, and you were an athlete. I mean, what's it like to have to walk back into a locker room at that point? In your mind, if you imagine both sides of it, imagine being the player that has to walk into the locker room and sort of reacclimate, but then also being the other guys in the locker room that in Cleveland's situation probably felt pretty deserted. I mean, this is uncomfortable for everybody.
Well, it's two completely different situations like that. Like one you had with Kyrie that we heard coming off the last year's playoff run was clearly already a little bit uncomfortable. And on the other side for Isaiah Thomas, it's not the guys in the locker room, it's the front office and the fans. I mean, no, we only saw one instance of it, but who knows if there were other fans out there going in on the jersey burning and the disloyalty and all those things. I have a feeling that's the relative minority, but if you are a fan that started to try and rationalize Isaiah Thomas's departure, all of a sudden now you're faced with that prospect of, all right, he's going back out and the whole city and that front office especially are trying to earn back the trust of this guy.
ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. Customers who switch to Progressive save an average of $500. Call or click today. Find out if we could save you hundreds on your car insurance. Speaking of locker rooms, there's decisions were made to name starting quarterbacks in a couple of locker rooms, and I want to get Golic's thoughts. What surprised you more, Blake Bortles in Jacksonville or Deshaun Kaiser in Cleveland? We'll do that next up. It's The Right Time with Bomani Jones. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. And, guys, you know there's no better time than right now to protect your family. So if you're like me and you've been putting off getting term life insurance, you have to call Select Quote. Here's the Select Quote difference. Most companies give you one option, one policy, one rate. But Select Quote gives you options, lots of options. Select Quote shops and could get you up to 15 options from highly rated life insurers. If you want to make the free call today and review your options, call 1-800-290-0303. Select Quote has been in business since 1985. You should trust them and their licensed U.S. agents because they've already protected over 1.2 million families. For example, a 40-year-old male that takes cholesterol medication could get $500,000 in life insurance for under $25 a month. That could be your cost to protect your family. I want you to give Select Quote a call, 1-800-290-0303, or go to selectquote.com today for a totally free personal quote, 1-800-290-0303. That's 1-800-290-0303. Get full details on the example policy at selectquote.com/commercials. Premium could vary depending on your health, issuing company, and other factors. Not available in all states.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. You're listening to The Right Time. ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our great guests have appeared via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Before we get any further, we do want to make sure everybody is aware of the update. Obviously, as our thoughts and our prayers are with the city of Houston. The Cowboys and Texans have moved their preseason game to AT&T Stadium, obviously, and BYU is moving their game against LSU, BYU-LSU, which was scheduled for Houston, is now being moved to New Orleans to take place on Saturday. The most important thing at this point is that everybody is safe. And I will say, as somebody that has lived in Nashville for many years, Nashville went through some flooding about a decade ago that forever changed the city. So this is a great opportunity to find out how to get involved and help Houston. So most important right now, above and beyond all the sports things that we have to discuss, we hope that the city of Houston we're able to help the city of Houston recover from all the damage.
Yeah, the Cowboys and the Texans are both making donations to relief efforts to help with the relief from Hurricane Harvey. J.J. Watt, we saw the video posted by him the other day, has donated $100,000 of his own money and has started a disaster relief donation that you can find on his social media page. And just encourage everyone, you can check social media. A lot of people tweeting out links where you can donate to relief efforts through the Red Cross and a number of organizations to help everyone out down there during this incredibly tragic and trying time for the city of Houston.
Absolutely. And we'll continue to keep you updated on anything else that we hear as the process goes on. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. Customers who switch to Progressive save an average of $500. Call or click today. Find out if we could save you hundreds on your car insurance. So, Mike Golic Jr., speaking of the NFL, I want to get your thoughts a little bit on starting quarterbacks, because we now are at a point where Blake Bortles has been named the starter in Jacksonville after what felt like about a 10-day farce of a competition for the Jags. And then Cleveland, Deshaun Kaiser is the starter down there. And the funny thing is, in one instance, I feel bad for the team. In the other instance, I feel bad for the player. I feel bad for the team of the Jags because obviously they wanted something they're not getting from Blake Bortles, and it's hard to think that that's suddenly going to turn around. I feel bad for the player, Deshaun Kaiser, in Cleveland, because at least in perception, Cleveland is sort of a graveyard at this point where quarterbacks go to watch their hopes dwindle away. So when you look at it, which opportunity do you think has more hope in it long term?
I think it's Deshaun Kaiser. I mean, you're in year one. Now, you talked about the farce of the competition. I think Jacksonville forgot that they already knew the book on Chad Henne, and it wasn't markedly better than Blake Bortles, or you probably wouldn't have stayed with him this long to begin with. The situations are so different, though. I mean, Blake Bortles, you're essentially playing for your NFL life right now, because we talked about them facing that RG3 situation in Jacksonville where the Redskins for a long time held RG3 out because they didn't want to be on the hook for that money next year. And Blake Bortles, if he's on the roster after a certain date in March, I think it is, they're on the hook for darn near $20 million for him in guaranteed salary next season. So it's Deshaun Kaiser going away. Talk about expectation coming off that fight. Look for him as a kid you picked in the second round. You brought in Brock Osweiler, who you may not have expected to be your long-term answer, but maybe at least a bridge guy to start the season. And now you're going in there, a place for Cleveland. They don't expect much out of quarterbacks anyway. And now all of a sudden they've actually invested in your O-line around you. You've got Corey Coleman and some young weapons at wideout, and maybe a defense with the top overall pick and Myles Garrett that could perform a little bit better. I don't know. It just seems to me there's a little more hope in Cleveland than we're used to seeing.
And I'm not going to disagree with that. The Cleveland situation this year, especially with Deshaun being a second-round pick, coming in, beating out a veteran that they hoped could sort of be the bridge, reminds me a little of Oakland a few years ago when Derek Carr came in and beat out Matt Schaub for the starting job as a second-round pick. I understand that logic, but I will say at the other side of it, while Blake Bortles is a known entity that most of us aren't necessarily a huge fan of, you have to look at it at some point, though, and say, hey, Leonard Fournette is expected to have some sort of great return there. There are offensive weapons all over the place in Jacksonville, and the defense has yet again reinvented itself financially. At least they've gone out and signed several guys. So you have to look at it at some point and say, hey, there are talented pieces. The difference between the two rosters is that right now, at least in Jacksonville, I feel like there is a team that needs a quarterback, but that team could be pretty good. A mediocre quarterback could have a pretty good year. The Jags could have a pretty good year, I should say, with a mediocre quarterback.
I would say that before I saw them play in the rest of the in the preseason. You look at what they've done throughout the course of the preseason, and the Jacksonville Jaguars have been getting pushed around on defense. On offense, they can't run the ball. We can talk about Leonard Fournette. Hasn't been on the field in large part because of small injuries that have kept him sidelined at this point. You want to protect your first round pick and get him to the games. But I just don't know if they're able to do enough. Like we talked about this even in the preseason games as you look, and yeah, Blake Bortles and Chad Henne both weren't lighting it up, but you had guys out there dropping passes, guys that you expected to be counting on like Allen Hurns in that receiving core, and then an O-line that can't really run the ball and can't really protect Blake Bortles at this point. So I'm not really inclined to say I have a ton of confidence in them top to bottom to begin with.
Well, you make a fair point that the offensive line is obviously not at all what the Jags had intended or hoped. And the running game has been abysmal at times during the preseason. But let's be honest, Leonard Fournette has missed the majority of the preseason. And you've got to feel like if you're drafting somebody that high, you're drafting them that high for a reason. How do you guys feel about it? You guys can also reach us. You know that on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed at Golic Jr. 57 at Jason Fitz. You can always reach us with your thoughts on it. I mean, obviously there are still pieces that need to be built in, but I can't change my mindset around the fact that Cleveland, when's the last time Cleveland had a great quarterback? And you know, that's the argument. Again, that's why I use the Oakland comparison. It had been a long time since Oakland they hadn't ever hand-grown a quarterback that they drafted in my lifetime. So obviously there's some precedent there.
But you're worrying about you're letting the past dictate what you think about now. Like if you didn't think that Hugh Jackson was capable of developing quarterbacks, which has been listed as a strength for him, so I don't know if that's where people are going. That'd be one thing. If you were saying that you have issues with DeShone Kizer, which some people do, there's reasons that he fell. I mean, he's still got some issues processing at the rate that you need an NFL guy, but has all of the talent in the world there. Don't let the past influence you on that one with Jacksonville. We're letting the now influence the now on them. Like, we're going off what we see with this team here and now saying they're still not going to be any good. Like, the Browns, yeah, that place is generally squashed hope, and which, again, I remind people when that tends to be a long-term MO, look up further, not down at the players and coaches. I think you've at least got a staff and some things in place now that should give you a little reason for optimism in Cleveland. Not much, but a little.
I love this. This is optimistic, Mike Golic Jr. I love it. It works for you, buddy. I look at both teams and I'm sitting there and I feel bad for both teams because I do think that the Jacksonville is a team that 2-3 months ago people wanted to find a reason why the Jags were going to be better, and that obviously hasn't happened. And Blake Bortles isn't going to let that happen the way he's playing. I just don't know that I can make that jump yet. I wish in a beautiful world I could take DeShone Kizer and put him over on the Jags roster and let's see what he could actually do with some level of what is at least perceived talent around it.
Well, listen, Isaiah Crowell is not a bad back. Duke Johnson is kind of a guy that can be a running back and a slot receiver for you. I think that the Cleveland Browns offensive line, at least payroll-wise, is better than what they've got in Jacksonville. That's me selfishly looking at a position where they've decided to spend this offseason. So outside of, the Allen brothers and Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson, they're in Jacksonville and maybe a few other parts. I mean, you've got expensive pieces on defense, but you've got 2 top-end-ish picks on your defense with Greg Williams there in Cleveland. I think we're doing a disservice to what they've got there just based on history.
That's interesting. We'll have to place a friendly hug wager on it at some point. We'll see how it all plays out. Giancarlo Stanton, 50th home run, by the way. And we haven't had the chance to get to that yet. I want to get your thoughts on it, Golic, because I feel like people are trying to reset the record books based on what they think instead of what the records are actually accepting. I'll tell you what I mean. We'll break it down next. It's The Right Time with Bomani Jones. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
The Right Time. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. Hanging out. And actually, we're going to get to hang out with you all week. Bomani Jones going to be taking a little break. We're going to be holding down the fort. 888-SAY-ESPN. 888-729-3776. Gojo, every time we get to work together, I feel like they're letting us in at the grown-up table. I feel like we've gotten to the point at the Thanksgiving table where we've just sort of kicked it down, and now we get to eat all of the grown-up food and sit with the grown-ups and try not to break any of the grown-up china. That's what we're doing, and so far I think today you've done a very nice job of not breaking any china.
Appreciate the evaluation on here, man. Yeah, listen, anytime they give me a chance not to set my alarm for 2:30 in the morning, I jump at that opportunity, and so it's been nice to hang out here in the afternoon. You're right; it's a decided step up in weight class from what we're both used to. So,
yeah,
doing the best we can. We got Allie, Shannon, and Nuno taking care of us, thankfully, making sure we stay inside the lines.
That's the most important part of this. I'm not sure that they're going to let us back. We'll see. Shannon and Nuno are going to. They're going to be focused on trying to block us tomorrow, and Allie's going to be focused on more important life things going on than anything that we have to say. But Major League Baseball focused, obviously, Giancarlo Stanton, 50th home run of the season. And it's created a little bit of a conversation piece because everybody wants to have a conversation about what his record could mean. And so you start to look at it and say, what could his record mean? Because ultimately, there is doubt about what the record is. For me, there is no doubt about what the record is because as long as Major League Baseball continues to come in and allow the steroid era to be the steroid era, and as long as they've come in and they've sort of accepted these things, I don't know how we get to go in now with revisionist history and change what home run records are.
No, and Giancarlo Stanton actually came out and co-signed this, said 61 is the number in his mind, basically roundabout stripping Barry Bonds of that title. And I found it funny. Now, for him, it's great. Stanton's the first NL player to reach 50 homers since Prince Fielder did it in 2007 with the Milwaukee Brewers. It's his 17th home run in August, tied him for second most in Major League Baseball history in the month. behind Rudy York's 18 in 1937. So he's hitting a lot of great career milestones. And for a guy the first half of the season that was largely overshadowed by what we saw with Aaron Judge and post-All-Star break, post-home run derby flop, has really been hitting it lights out. All I got to say is, and I've been watching this guy for a while. He was a high school football teammate of one of my roommates, a guy I played with at Notre Dame by the name of Dane Chris, was an unbelievable high school tight end. So I've been watching him for a while, back in the days when he was Mike Stanton before he switched over to Giancarlo. And so this is great. Like, I love rooting for the guy. But, man, if you're going to come out and say 61's a number, you better damn sure make sure you make it to 62.
I mean, which I love. That's
like, if
fantastic.
you're going to come out here shooting like this, you better make damn sure that 61 gets eclipsed by season's end, or else it's going to look pretty awkward.
I mean, do you though get to just come in and revise it? I mean, at some point, baseball has made a statement, and they've made a statement that 73 is the number. So how do you get to come in when you're going for the number and just decide? That'd be like you. I mean, you taught me so much about speed eating with the donut holes, right? You taught me, and what was that? Chipmunking. You taught me about chipmunking, which I didn't even know was a thing. Can you imagine going into a hot dog eating contest and just deciding that you're going to reset the record? Doesn't matter why. You're resetting the record. I mean, we don't get to have an opinion on this. Baseball made the decision.
Here the why matters. And I disagree with the why, but here the why matters, because so many people in baseball are opposed to this, that what he's really doing, and maybe he is a baseball purist, and maybe he truly believes that era harmed baseball in a lot of ways that they're still feeling right now. But at the very least, he's playing to a crowd and an audience that's willing to listen, because we hear a lot of people trying to differentiate between that era that's got one giant asterisk in front of it with a lot of people's minds and what we're seeing potentially right now with a guy who, at this point in time, we believe to be clean, getting ready to eclipse some of this marks. He's playing to an audience that seems very willing to listen in baseball right now, and would be very willing to embrace someone going after this number.
I think the one thing that this really shows me is that no matter how far baseball tries to get removal from the steroid era, it never removes itself. I mean, at some point, it's always a conversation when we see somebody hitting this many home runs.
But I think if he gets over this number, you'll have a lot of people that will celebrate this in a way that reflects how much they want to distance themselves from that steroid era.
And maybe that's the case, and I realize that maybe that's easier. That's an easier conversation piece for baseball fans and for purists of baseball. It's an easier conversation piece to give themselves somebody viably that is there without the asterisk. But I just can't wrap my head around the logic that somebody just gets to come in and redecide what the record is. You just get to come in and say, no, baseball, you're wrong, I'm right.
Well, by your logic, you just give him a home run participation trophy and move on.
Oh, I hate participation trophies. We've established that. But we could still say, hey, heck of an effort hitting 61, even though it's not the record. Coming up next, Jeff Dickerson, Myron Metcalf are going to keep all this momentum going. They'll be up next. It's Right Time with Bomani Jones. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very